To do. I am calling this meeting to order at 7 o'clock sharp. That's fantastic. All right, that never happens, by the way, ever, that we start a meeting right on time, so great job. We will take roll to determine quorum, and when I call you, stand up, raise your hand. These are the people who are on the Public Safety Committee. Josh?
Present.
Kelvin Tolbert, Josh Sauter, Kelvin Tolbert, Jennifer Luce, here. Adam Wright,
Here.
and I am here. Everybody is here. All right.
I get on there.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Roy Newaser. I'm the president of the Encino Neighborhood Council. I want to thank the panelists for joining us tonight and thank all of you for joining us. I really appreciate everyone who thought this was important enough to take time out of your evening to be part of this. We're here because homelessness is a complex issue that touches everyone in some way. And the goal tonight is not to solve homelessness. It's to provide information and access. So we want you to leave here with a better understanding of who is doing the work and how the city is addressing homelessness. There's a ton of brain power on the stage, even more than I was expecting, so that is great, but it means that we have to be disciplined with our time so we can get to as many of your questions as possible. If you have questions, we're passing around comment cards. Write your question on it. And write your name on it so I can call you to ask your question, and we'll have people walking around collecting those question cards. When you come up to ask your question, you'll have 1 minute to speak. So don't go on and on. Keep your questions on topic. If there's a pothole on your street, this is not the time for that. Even though these are the people for that, this is not the time for that. If you have a question and you don't want to answer, you don't want to ask it yourself, you can leave your name off, and we'll just ask your question for you. But if you put your email address at the bottom, that will add you to our email list. Panelists, please try to answer the questions in 2 to 3 minutes if you can, so we can get to as many questions as possible. And we are going to do what I'm going to call lightning introductions. So I've asked each panelist to tell us their name, who they work for, their position, and what their organization's role is with respect to homelessness. And I'm going to ask them to keep it to under 90 seconds per person. But so this is also when you guys have a question, you guys can know who the question could be addressed to. It could be the mayor's office or police department or LASA or whoever it is. So kind of keep track of who you want to answer your questions. So we'll start with Vahid, who's representing the mayor's office.
All right, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for having me. Vahid Corsan, Deputy Mayor of Community Engagement. That's very loud. Longtime Encino resident, former Encino Chamber of Commerce president. Prior to this role, owned a business, still own a business. Very familiar with a lot of the issues. My gym is down the street. Potholes talk to me. I am the former president of the Board of Public Works. Took on this role of Deputy Mayor of Community Engagement in May of last year. You're asking yourself, why the Deputy Mayor of Community Engagement? We have been very proactive in telling the story of Inside Safe and our homelessness policy in the mayor's office. So who better else than someone who's looking to build coalitions, tell you what we're doing, find out what's going wrong and how we can fix it, and really address some of the myths out there and also tell some of the truths. Some of the truths are homelessness is down over the last 2 years, 17.5% in Los Angeles, mainly because of Inside Safe. We're doing tremendous work there with 150 encampments that have been cleaned up and over 5,000 people taken off the streets. A lot of that is in collaboration with my folks to the left. So I'm going to move the mic down.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jonah Glickman. I serve as the Housing and Homelessness Liaison for County Supervisor Lindsay Horvath. So LA County runs the social safety net for LA County. So we run the Department of Public Social Services, the Department of Mental Health, Health Services, and Public Health. The supervisor's been leading in the creation of the first ever county department of homeless services and housing. So at the county, we're creating a centralized department where we can coordinate homeless services, which has never existed before. The supervisor's taking this action after multiple audits have showed deficiencies in the existing system. So we're taking steps to directly contract with homeless service providers to provide oversight at interim housing, permanent housing sites, and street outreach. And we're trying to more intentionally coordinate across those health departments. We all know that the Department of Mental Health has been a big issue in our homeless response system for a long time. So it's a priority of our office to bring those mental health services out to the streets. In my role for the supervisor, I work on street-based homelessness, advising on homeless policy, also a Valley native and former district director for Council District 6. So I've experienced this issue from both the city and county perspectives, so I'm really glad to be here with you all tonight.
Yes. Hi everyone, Patrick Siggins, Director of Homelessness Services for the Office of Council District 4, Nathan Robin. As the Council District, we oversee city services in Encino, directly with homelessness services. That would be kind of coordinating air traffic control for services such as outreach, sanitation, coordinating with other jurisdictional partners that reside within the district, and working with our interim housing services and permanent housing services. And my boss, the council member, serves on the housing and homelessness committee chair, of which she works on city policy to address homelessness services.
Good evening, Officer Owalio with Los Angeles Police Department. I'm your senior lead officer for Encino area. I work with the council member and the neighborhood council with complaints and concerns in the area.
Can you talk a little louder, everybody?
Yeah.
We'll turn up the mic a bit.
Good evening, I'm Captain Johnny Smith. I'm happy to say that I've been moved back to the Valley. This is my 4th Valley Command, which was transferred recently from the South and 77th Division. So I look forward to working with everyone in this room. I am the patrol captain, substituting for Captain Brian Miller.
Good evening, my name is Dr. Kiara Payne. I'm here representing the LA County Department of Homeless Services and Housing. My role is the Associate Director of Regional Partnerships and System Coordination. And the Department of LA County Homeless Services and Housing, which we refer to as HSH, has been, the word is escaping me right now, so I apologize. But our role is to coordinate the county's response on homelessness in regards to housing, supportive services, and health. And we do that with the partnership of our community partners, cities, COGS, other county departments, also touching clients that are unsheltered, to be able to reduce gaps, fill the barriers, and improve outcomes.
Hello everyone, my name is Matthew Mitnick with the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, otherwise known as LAHSA. And really what LAHSA does, I really look at it into 3 components. So one of which is outreach. So if you see an encampment in your neighborhood, if we receive calls of a growing situation with our neighbors on the streets, our outreach teams will go out there, we'll connect with people, we'll build rapport, and the goal is to help them transition into shelter. And that's the second component of what LAHSA does. We oversee the shelter system, manage that, and then the third component will be permanent housing, where we help place people from the shelters to permanent housing. Personally, with me, I'm with Government Affairs and Community Relations. I started LAHSA actually as a policy analyst, where I saw really an in-depth look of the homeless services system from the inside, seeing how all the different partners, many of which are on the stage today, operate. And then now in community relations, what I like about that is I get to work directly with you all to bring your solutions to the table. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you guys for the opportunity to come speak directly to you, and also thank you guys for being such an engaged community. My name is Saur Salas. I work with LA Sanitation, and my scope of responsibility is oversight of the Care and Care Plus program, which is in charge of homeless encampment cleanups, as well as illegal dumping illegal dumping eradication service.
Hi everyone, my name is Celeste Mirales. I'm also with LA Sanitation. I am a supervisor for LA Sanitation, part of the Care Care Plus program, and I work as a liaison, providing resources and just making sure that we have what we need on the ground.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dan Mansfield. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and one of the program managers for the Homeless Outreach Mobile Engagement Program with the Department of Mental Health. We are the highest level of outpatient care for people experiencing both severe mental illness and homelessness, but we are a small program within a very large department, most of which serves people experiencing homelessness. I am happy to talk about any of those programs as best I can, including our alternative crisis response teams, our housing facilities, our residential treatment facilities. We have a breadth of resources.
Good evening, I'm Bill Lopez with the Department of Recreation and Parks. I'm with the Homeless Related Services Team. We're a maintenance division within Recreation and Parks. We service all 15 council districts 1 through 15, cleaning and clearing homeless encampments on park grounds. We intake most of our work from the public via the MyLA 311 app, whether it's reported encampments in our park grounds through the app or internally through Recreation and Parks cartograph system. We intake all the service requests that are provided to us. We schedule, work with a lot of the partners here on stage, LASA, we work with sanitation and our council district partners as well as LAFD, and other multiple agencies cleaning and clearing encampments in our parks.
Hi, I'm Veronica Davey. I work with Chrysalis. We were brought to the table, I think, primarily because recently we did a pilot project in the Silver Basin to help do some vegetation management. So Chrysalis is a little different. We're a nonprofit. We work with a lot of public agencies to do what we do. And what we do is, for the last 40 years, we try to help folks who face high barriers to entry and get employment. So people dealing with homelessness, incarceration, substance abuse, or just poverty or down on their luck. They walk in our doors and we services. And since '84, when we started, 95,000 people have been served by Chrysalis. Just last year, 2,200 people who walked in our doors. We have several offices, one in Pacoima, were able to land a full-time job. And then in addition to that, one of our amazing programs is called Transitional Employment, helping people get back on their feet for a year of employment. And we have 4 different business lines. And through that, last year, 1,600 people started to receive a regular paycheck and help improve their lives, including getting off the street and finding a place to live. 75% of the people that we serve are not sure where they're going to sleep in the next night. And so that's a common thread, and we do try to help connect them with services, but mainly we try to change lives through jobs.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Laxton. I'm with Chrysalis as well. I am the Senior Operations Manager for the Roads business line. What we do is we work with the homeless and the justice impacted, and we give the job opportunities, and we pay the transitional employees weekly pay $18.50, $19 an hour, and we work alongside Caltrans, and we do litter abatement and landscape maintenance. The individuals that you see on the side of the roads are with the Chrysalis vans. We are keeping the roadside cleans, we're keeping the landscape up, and we're keeping the freeways and your streets clean. One thing I can say about Roads business line with Chrysalis, we have helped get outside employment with Caltrans, 63 jobs since 2018. So they do find outside employment. They do get full-time jobs with our help. And I have business cards, I can talk more about it. Cynthia Latson, Roads business line for Chrysalis. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tim Campbell. I'm a semi-retired public secretary. I got a I still retain my professional auditor certifications. I write a weekly column for City Watch LA on homelessness program performance, and I do volunteer audit and performance measurement for the LA Alliance for Human Rights.
Thank you very much to this wonderful panel. I hope you guys all agree. if it helps you guys at all, they are sitting in a very particular order. And it starts with policy people, with the mayor, supervisor, and council office. They set the policy. Then we've got LAPD with enforcement. And then we've got management of the programs, HSH and LASA, delivery of services, LA Sand, DMH, Rec and Parks. And then hopefully exit, which is Chrysalis, getting them off the streets and out of homelessness. And we end with Tim, who has definitely has a fan club. He's a prolific writer on homelessness. And when we planned this, Tim was the first person I called to ask to be here because I appreciate his work so much. I call him like the government homelessness accountability advocate. And he probably knows as much about homelessness as any layperson and probably more than some professionals. So he's kind of here to share. He doesn't work for the government. He's kind of here to be share an independent perspective. So if you want kind of an unbiased, unfiltered perspective, you can ask him. And he might serve as a fact checker for us too if he hears some things that maybe don't mesh with what he knows to be, might know to be the case. But I'm going to start with Tim. My first question is going to be for Tim. Can you try to identify the biggest mistake the city is making that slows progress and the most important thing they can do to more effectively address the homelessness problem?
That's a heck of a question. I would say.
Can you hold it up?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I don't do public speaking very much. That's why I would say the biggest problem is structure. Because in reality, there are no citywide programs or policies. There are 15 council districts. Each one of those council districts implements its programs differently. I live in Tracy Parks District. Needless to say, she has a different approach than Councilmember Rahman. I'm not here to criticize one person or the other over that, but it's a disjointed approach that really is the biggest barrier, I think, right now.
And what's the most important thing that can be done to make things more effective? Is it just to be more in sync with each other?
There's a lot of things, and I think some of that will probably come up through the evening. You could say, take homelessness policy out of the hands of individual council members and impose it citywide. But that's no guarantee that the quality is going to improve, the effectiveness, and my big thing, the outcomes, the performance. It's got to be even more fundamentally structured than that. You can get into that later, for sure.
Thank you for that. All right, so I'm going to let my public safety committee ask questions. Adam has one.
Will you let us respond to that, Roy?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
I think generally speaking, we all agree with what was just said about different policies across each council district and the structural challenges. I think that just points out, from our perspective, why Inside Safe has been effective. It sets a tone citywide. Of course, it's a collaboration with council offices, but it has broken the status quo. It has proven effective at bringing people off the streets. It does require additional support, but it has shown that it works. When you do it 120 times, you bring 5,000 people off the streets in a little over 3 years. That collaboration, that setting the tone, it has worked. Not without challenges that we're still addressing and we're working through, but I just wanted to lay it out there that to that comment that there is success somewhere.
Yeah. I think this is also, Tim, a great point, and one of the items that Councilmember Rahman has taken most seriously is exactly what you described. And the reason we created the Bureau of Homelessness that's falling under the Housing Department that is currently in the process of being brought online and stood up is to bring a universal approach across the city. And while there are certainly pitfalls with having 15 different approaches, it does also allow for some nuance for various community regions to respond, for their district leaders to respond to the individual needs of those council districts. But the Bureau of Homelessness is going to do many of the services and oversight that has been lacking over the years, because as many of you may know, over the last 15 to 20 years, the amount of money that has been spent on homelessness has increased, multitudes of times, from about $17 million in, I think, 2005 to, hundreds of millions of dollars now. And we haven't subsequently matched that oversight properly. And one of the things Councilmember Rahman did was, over the last few years, as chair of the H&H committee, has identified those issues and worked to find solutions. And the Bureau of Homelessness is going to be the place in the city that can do that oversight and have measurable outcomes and monitor those, which is underway right now.
So mine's a two-part. 3 weeks ago, we had a homeless person who passed away on the corner of Haskell and Ventura. And we also have one living for the past 3 years underneath the 405 on Ventura and Sepulveda. So one of my questions, what is the city policy for the service resistant? And the second question is, what percentage of homeless accept help and return to the streets?
I can address some of those. To one point, and others may have specific questions about specific individuals, and out of respect for folks, I don't want to get too deep in any of the cases, and I think many of the folks from DMH and DHS and having these conversations want to be sensitive to that. To the individual that passed away on Ventura and Haskell, it's a tragedy. I mean, there's no other better way to say that. And that individual is one of several who have actually passed away in the last several weeks and months. Each one's a tragedy, each one's a different case, but I think it screams to the urgency of the situation and how difficult it is to bring many people indoors who need the help. And that kind of segues into your second question about service resistant. There are various levels of service resistant. There are those who may not know actually really what's being offered, never been in a shelter or scared of it. And often in those cases, the teams work to build rapport, bring people in to they can schedule a time to go and see the shelter. Often that alone changes someone's mind and they realize what they're getting into and come forward. Others have other challenges, mental health challenges, substance use challenges, behavioral issues that are their own barriers. And those are extremely challenging. And all of us as Angelinos have seen those folks on the street deteriorating over the years, maybe screaming at intersections. And I think we can all probably appreciate in our own way how difficult and challenging it is to help that person. Those are folks that law enforcement, fire department, their families, doctors have all struggled to find support with. And I'll defer to our friends at DMH to answer more appropriately their approach to dealing with those folks. But the last thing I'll say as far as the city's approach, we are set to basically approach and get folks in who may be slightly service hesitant, but when they are really suffering from a high level of elevated needs, that is where we are relying on county partners at DHS, DMH, Department of Mental Health, Department of Health Services, to provide those services and wraparound support and the beds appropriate for those folks. Because you have to remember that folks with high needs come into shelters with folks that may have just recently become homeless and lost their apartment. That's a difficult match, and that's a challenge in the site itself. So, a long answer to a complicated and long-standing problem.
Yeah, quick comment on that too. And just as a reminder to everybody in the room that based on mortality reports from the county, 7 people die every single day on the streets of LA County. right? So that's a horrible tragedy, and I myself have known far too many people who passed away while they were on the street before I could get them into a shelter, get them into permanent housing, and it's an incredible tragedy that occurs every single day, sorry. I think to Patrick's point, it is really important to look at why that individual is service resistant, whether that's mental health, substance use disorder, trauma. We have a lot of people who struggle to re-enter shelter systems because of previous trauma that they may have experienced at a shelter in the past, so that's often something that we're trying to work through with individuals and find the services that meet their unique needs. In our permanent housing portfolio, it's about 80 to 90% of people do stay housed. So to your question about like folks who actually stick and stay in the programs, it's about 90% after a year, 80% after 2 years. It still means we have a lot of people falling out of housing, right? So we have to think about what it is that drives that, which again, for the county services is challenging. It's not black and white, right? Like mental health is not a black and white issue. Folks may be having a good day one day and then the case manager leaves and they're in a good place, and they might not be in a good place the next day. So it's really challenging for us to try to hold the providers accountable in these programs to make sure that individuals are being met with their caseworkers, they're working with them through these challenges, offering the substance use and recovery programs that the county offers, which, I mean, that's a whole other question I won't dive into, but the challenges with getting folks to accept recovery. And frankly, to your question on service resistance, it is falling upon law enforcement, emergency rooms, and our justice system. So those are the places that are unduly burdened when we don't have the correct solutions for people.
I'd like Dan from DMH could address the mental health side of this.
I think Patrick and Jonah did an excellent job of articulating the diversity of service resistance. Really, gotta hold the mic. Turn it off. Is that better? Yes. Okay. I think Patrick and Jonah did an excellent job of articulating the diversity of service resistance. There are dozens of reasons that somebody could be refusing services, from a lack of trust to prior bad experiences to having a neurocognitive disorder like dementia or a severe mental illness like schizophrenia, and literally not being able to understand their impairments and that they need help. The technical term, I promise it's not my fault, it just keeps going now. The technical term for that is anosognosia. It's a symptom of some mental illnesses, and it means not knowing one's own mind, not knowing one's own limitations. My program, the Home Team, is designed to serve those folks, the people with the severe mental illnesses whose illness itself is the thing preventing them from going inside. It gets complicated, I'll be frank, because what we are having to do is determine capacity. We all have the right to decide whether or not we want to receive services. That is true of all of us in this room, and it is true if you are experiencing homelessness too. When it becomes less true is when you have a very severe mental illness that impairs your ability to make those kinds of decisions. And it's a very difficult determination to determine whether or not somebody has capacity. And the results of that determination are really consequential. It might mean being physically restrained and strapped to a gurney and taken to a hospital against your will and having medications forced upon you. And so that is not an act that can be taken lightly. We have to ensure that all voluntary offers of service are exhausted prior to that kind of intervention. And then those interventions don't work for everybody. For somebody experiencing something like schizophrenia, they can work really well because antipsychotic medication can work wonders. For somebody where the primary issue might be substance use, there's no medication that is going to clear that up as well as an antipsychotic medication is going to. There are medications that will help, right? But there is no medication that is going to totally take away what brought that person to that point. And so while it might seem like a simple solution to send everybody to the hospital when they seem like they're not doing well, often it can result in them being right back out and being less willing to engage services the next time somebody comes up to them. So these decisions about using these more restrictive interventions have to be approached very carefully. I promise it's not me. This is a bad link.
just to close out the policy side of the road, I think any loss on the streets in homelessness, mental health, is very tragic and sad. And I think for too long, the policies of the city and the county created this emergency. And you have at this end, although maybe we don't always agree on our policy sides, 3 policy leaders who come with different backgrounds who have said the status quo is not working and we need to try something different. Mayor Bass, who comes from a healthcare provider background, has made that clear from day one that we have to look at this as an emergency. And not everyone who's on the streets should be staying on the streets. But getting them the help they need is not gonna also happen on the streets, and the only way to get them the help and the resources to move on is to bring them inside. And we don't have, as a city, enough interim housing sites to do that. And that is the biggest roadblock to tackling the crisis of street homelessness, whether it's mental health related, drug use related. We have to get people off the streets. That is what we need to do. And the mayor, the supervisor, and I'll even speak for the council member, all agree that that is the policy that's gonna work best. We are breaking that status quo of what was not working in our own ways. And we're gonna get there. As I've said with Insight Safe, with different programs, we're seeing that once you move someone off the streets, there is a pathway to recovery, to reducing the number of street homelessness in the city and the county.
Hello, thank you very much. All right, we're going to go to the members of the public who are here. So, Jennifer Clark, if you want to come right up and ask your question.
It's so great to see so many faces. It just leads us to appreciate transparency by all facets of this. Thank you for the Encino Neighborhood Council for hosting this tonight. So my question was related that after many, many years, the emergency declaration was lifted, and how is that going to change the processes that you've been following for so many years?
Whoever wants to take that.
Well, I would just say that they're, so also on the civic engagement side, so the County of Los Angeles, City of Los Angeles are 2 separate entities. So the county's emergency declaration on homelessness is still in effect. It helps us speed up contracting, hiring, and procedures internally at the county. The city's emergency declarations are a little bit different. So I just want to say, like, from the county's perspective, ours is still in place, but I know the city's, there's like different declarations that they're subject to.
Yes, and without going too in the weeds, many of the parts of the emergency declaration that were enabling fast tracking of building and whatnot are already encapsulated in other declarations, so they can stand. And the urgency of the homelessness issue is still being addressed, and the actual need for the emergency declaration was diminished by what was currently underway.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good seeing you. For a minute there, I thought you were going to ask me about 311 week. I think the simple answer is nothing's changed. We are still approaching this with the same urgency as before. A lot of the goals that were set out from day one on the executive directive have been met, which is setting up Insight Safe, quickly working out interim housing sites, quickly getting folks off the street, showing this model works, gaining momentum and building progress, and I think those immediate goals were met. And so that is the only need to have the emergency declaration, but we're still moving with the same urgency. We're still accomplishing those goals. We're still working across all 15 council districts. We're still working with all the same partners to deliver those same results. And there was an Insight Safe operation just last week that I think, if my memory serves me right, was close to 50 people from one encampment. So it's still moving with the same level of urgency and emergency as before.
All right, part two.
And then specifically toward the tiny homes that are on Rex and Park properties, will they still continue now that the emergency order has been lifted?
I think each interim site will work kind of independently on what may be happening and planned when they were developed. But those are those permits are reissued annually, I believe, for all of them, and I'm not sure if someone from Mexico Park would be able to address that question. But for instance, we have our ABH Riverside Shelter exists on Reckitt Park's land, and each year we go forward and renew that permit. But we assess the need for this shelter annually, so that's what's addressing, the decision each year.
Just to add really quick to that from LASA, in August, many of you were at the essentially the town hall we did on the basin, and we heard concerns, regarding is outreach being done, and at least from what LASA's perspective is on this, is every time someone in this group has reached out to us, we are treating it like an emergency. And I know this isn't specific to the declaration, but I feel like if we're treating this as the critical issue it is, you, the community, have to be involved in that. And what I will say is, I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience who've reached out to us since that meeting and have told us about ongoing situations that are happening in their neighborhood that maybe we aren't seeing because we're not there 24/7. And it's been super helpful to our outreach team, so I do thank you all for that. But we want to continue that momentum and keep it going.
Tim, I'm going to ask Tim if he's got anything he wants to add to anything that's been.
Yeah, and I want to preface what I'm saying is, again,
Speak
I'm not
into the
here to
microphone, please.
Sorry. I feel like being lineman. I'm not here to argue with anybody, especially the folks up here, because I think the people here are sincere and they really want to solve homelessness just as much as any of us in this room. But there's a saying in auditing that evidence with no context has no value. When you put numbers out there and they don't reference something, it's very hard to understand what that means. And just for perspective, for Insight Safe, according to the city controller, so it's not my numbers, it's the city controller's numbers, the expense so far has been $323,452,150. And it's housed 1,243 people. That comes out to $260,000 per person housed. That's not counting the housing, because that's the construction of the housing is a whole different thing. They've served, and what the definition of serve is pretty vague. 5,179 people, and that comes out to a per capita cost of $62,000. For reference, the 2023 per capita income in the city of Los Angeles was $48,000 a year. So, $48,000 a year is basically what the average worker in LA is making. The city is spending quite a bit more than that per person in Insight Safe. Part of that may be appropriate because of the intensive services that some of the folks here just mentioned. But you've got to have an idea of what all this is costing. And the only other thing I want to mention is we're going to probably hear a lot of numbers tonight. And there's an old saying that, liars figure and figures lying, things like that. If that were true, I would have been out on the job 30 years ago. Numbers are absolute. They're immutable. They are as unforgiving as gravity. You can cook them, you can spin them, you can bend them, but 2 + 2 is always 4, and it's never 5 or 3. So when you try to take a number and turn it into something else, it's never going to work.
Prior to joining the city, I was an equities research analyst, which means I'm really good with numbers because I did that for 14 years, and my brother still has a very successful business. Numbers don't lie. Those are facts. Numbers, 1 + 1 is 2 always. But you can throw numbers out there and do the math and say something costs something, and is it worth it? And the question is, well, what alternatives have worked? And the answer is not much, because as Adam pointed out, someone on the corner of Haskell and Ventura died. So what would have been the alternative to not doing the Insight Safe? We understand that the costs are high. We're always looking to reduce costs, and in fact, we have been reducing the costs. But it took the effort to get it up and running to prove that the system, when you bring people off the streets, you reduce the costs that are also associated with it. And one of those costs is the LAFD, who even themselves have said it costs millions of dollars a year just to respond to unhoused people on the streets. So there is these costs that we can add up, and there are these other hidden costs that we need to address. And it's horrible what's happening and what has happened. But I'm not here to like create myths or give you different facts. We're trying to stop it. We're trying to break that status quo. We're trying to prove that there's a different way of doing it, and what happened for 40 years is not going to work anymore. And I think that the three of us, at least on this side, on the policy side, are continuously fighting to show that this model works. We will have to find ways to do it at a lower cost. And like I said at Inside Safe, we have reduced the cost because it was expensive to build up interim housing through motels. But you have to ask yourself when someone throws out, well, it's cost this much money to do it. Well, what would the alternative cost? And what is that alternative? What do you propose? If this is a dialogue, I'm happy to have that dialogue with you all to tell me what are the alternatives.
I'll just say this, I came to this work recently. I have an MBA, I ran a $50 million education fund, philanthropy, and I feel like this work is more impactful than anything else I've ever done. The numbers are rough, even for our nonprofit, we have great numbers, but so many people, don't make it through the program and don't go. But the ones that do, that is generational change for our family. That is often a family reuniting. And you lose that. Use the microphone. And okay. I think the numbers are complicated. What I'm saying. Hello. Not that important for this.
Sorry. I just wanted to share. Chrysalis, we look at one person getting their life back together, getting their family back together, even if they're single. The generational change of that is immeasurable. So it's something to think about when we talk about how the government's spending money and how nonprofits are spending money. Just encourage you to think of that. And also to the other person's point about getting involved. We're in Pacoima. Everybody is welcome to come and help people do their resume, help them on the computer, and really get a sense of what's going on. I know I've learned a lot by being at Chrysalis. I look at everything different as I drive around the community with my kids, and it really does help when you can think more creatively about solutions and how to meet people where they are. Chrysalis gives paychecks once a week. We have bathrooms that are accessible. We meet people where they are, and when we say you can come back a second, third, fourth time if it doesn't work the first time. And these are things I'd never understand if I wasn't part of this world right now. Sorry. It's your money. You did this.
All right, so money came up, and we can figure how much money was spent and how many people were served and do the division to figure out what it is per person. But part of the problem is we don't know what the heck that money is paying for. And people are trying to find out, and our city attorney is trying to stop that from happening. And the city attorney is asking for more and more money, and the city council is handing it over hand over fist, $7.5 million, and the cost keeps going up. Meanwhile, we're told there's no money for cops, there's no money for road repairs, there's no money for street lights. So we're kind of literally and figuratively being kept in the dark. So I want to know from Patrick, because all this money has to be approved by city council. Will Councilmember Rahman commit to cutting off any additional payments for legal fees in this case, where the attorney is trying to protect, trying to shield what the money is being spent for and avoid accountability? Can we stop that?
I will not be able to give you a definitive answer on that this evening. I will say that the council member has expressed extreme concern about the cost and the inflated costs that are occurring with those legal fees. However, there's context also that involves the ongoing litigation and other conversations that happen internally within the city for those payments that I'm not part of those conversations. So I do want to say that the council member expressed her concern about how expensive that is, and it is it's an ongoing conversation. But I just don't have the answer this evening to give to you on that.
Let her know that I think most of the people here would like the city to stop paying to hide and not be accountable. All right, Kelvin, go ahead.
We know the programs that she's actually doing. Okay. So that is not accurate.
I'm sorry, can I add something?
Yeah.
I mean, to that, it's interesting to me because, with all the talk about success and numbers and things like that, and the 23,000 people that are asked to shelter or house, I had an article here from the Times from last week where Matt Szabo, the CEO, was under cross-examination from the attorney for LCAN in the Alliance case. And again, disclaimer, I do volunteer work for the Alliance, so take that as it comes. I'm sorry. And he was being pressed on the number of shelter beds that are actually have been created in the Alliance settlement and the number that are available. And he really couldn't come up with an answer. And it strikes me as odd that you've got public officials saying, look at all the success we have. Look at all the people we've sheltered. But the Alliance basically saying, okay, great, prove it. Well, no, we can't do that. That's why we're paying these people $7 million a year. That's why we pay these folks $7 million because, and I've seen the numbers and I've seen the reports. And if you read the audit or the report from the audit firm Alvarez and Marsal that came out last week, and I know that's a touchy subject for some of the folks up here, but they basically say the same thing. They asked month after month. They were asking for just solid statistics, and they couldn't come up with it. And the only other thing, and this is very, very important, is a lot of the time when you hear, we house 23,000 people or whatever. Is it on? That's it's on. What they've actually, there's a difference between process and outcome. You've done something 23,000. You've performed a housing action 23,000 times. You've done something 23,000 times when in fact a goodly number of those people are the same person. In 2019, the city controller noted that if somebody left a shelter and then came back after a certain amount of time, they were counted again as a unique person. And A&M found the same thing. The LA County auditor in a 2024 audit found the same thing. So, your first question, what would I do? What would I recommend? Get your numbers right. Get the performance measures. And again, I'm not contradicting or even disagreeing, or I don't want to get into a philosophical fight with anybody up here. But I think it goes towards the credibility of what the city is putting out there. That we helped all these people, but in the one place that they're being asked to prove it, they're fighting it with a law firm they're paying $1,300 an hour for per attorney.
So just on that, because I appreciate Tim being here and representing the Alliance lawsuit members. I don't have the insight into the lawsuit because I'm not a part of that team. What I would say, if we're going to throw audits out, there are other audits as well that should be mentioned too. Rand Corporation did their own study that found a 50% decrease in street homelessness in Hollywood because of Inside Safe. So, but I guess that one doesn't count, but we only want to point out the ones that favor your math. So that's biased math instead of the actual math.
I happen to have a list here. In June of 27, HUD dinged Lasha because they were not properly accounting for their expenses, and Lasha said they were short-staffed. In 2018, the LA County auditor dinged Lasha for the exact same thing. The excuse was the same: we don't have sufficient staffing. In 2021, the LA auditor dinged Lasha for the same thing. In 2024, the LA County auditor dinged Lasha for the exact same thing. How many times does it take until they make the changes that they kept saying they were going to make, until they do it? And I'm sorry if I find, sound a little brusque, but, if you're going to claim success, have the numbers to back it up. And not the numbers from yourself, numbers from outside third parties, numbers from the controller. The controller in 2023 said that the shelter data was so bad that city help center staff were having to call individual shelters to see if there were vacancies. In 2024, when Mayor Bass was claiming a lot of people being sheltered, the city controller, Kenneth Mieha, by the way, found that no shelter exceeded 80% capacity. So, yeah, you can choose whatever study you want.
Well, yeah.
And I got a bunch of them right here.
Yeah, and multiple of the audits you mentioned are done by the county's auditor controller. So when that 2024 audit came out, supervisor and her colleagues said, let's change things up. Let's not have a philosophical debate. Let's have a structural conversation about how we're going to deliver homeless services in the county. Right? So us at the county, we're pulling hundreds of millions of dollars out of LASA to the Department of Homeless Services and Housing so that we can oversee our own contracts and administer our own services directly instead of giving money to a third party and then asking them for data and trying to get through another layer of bureaucracy that frankly doesn't need to exist. So, I think we could go back and forth all night about audits and what's happened, and I want to talk with the audience here about where we're moving forward. And I know that there's a lot of questions from the audience here. So I don't know if we have, you've been waiting there patiently, sir, to ask your questions. So I don't know if we want to get some of these other questions going so we can maybe get some of the other folks in the panel engaged.
We want somebody under oath.
Okay. Thank you. I do just want to add a little bit of context because as a city resident, those numbers are frightening, right? From a department perspective, those costs are actually real. It costs sanitation between $3,000 and $10,000 on average to send a cleanup team out there. That includes disposal costs for solid waste, hazardous waste, labor costs, vehicle costs, fuel, et cetera, et cetera. So those costs are real. But a cleanup, if you don't remove the people off the street, we have to come back and clean it in 2 weeks, in a month. So ultimately, the best and most efficient, although highest cost, is getting people off the street, we clean it, and then there's no encampment anymore. So that is the best investment in our opinion.
Okay, first I'd like to say none of us have unlimited money. I mean, I know things are rewarding when we get people off the street, but if it costs us unlimited money, it's not going to work. We all can deal with magic all we want. Now, what is the definition of permanent housing? And again, how and who's going to pay for it?
Well, there's a few different definitions. So the federal government funds housing vouchers, right? So Section 8 are what you call a housing choice voucher. So that's a voucher that's given to an individual funded by the federal government, which, by the way, was trying to cut these vouchers a bit ago. Thankfully, it looks like we're good there. So federal housing vouchers are one form of permanent housing, right? It's attached to an individual. They can move from building to building. We also have what we call project-based vouchers, right? So when a building gets built, like with Prop HHH or ED1 projects, a lot of them get built with vouchers attached to that building. So 100 units are going up in that building, and it's got 100 vouchers for that building. Then we work with LASA in the city to find people in our shelters and match them to those vouchers in the buildings. The city and county also fund what we call time-limited subsidies. So that's a 24-month subsidy, usually about $2,000 a month. The goal is over that 24-month period to stabilize that person, connect them to employment services like with Chrysalis down there, and stabilize that person so after they are able to pay their rent moving forward. So then we have a problem, right? So there's an issue where what we try to do with people who are on that time-limited subsidy is to also, what we call upstream them, connect them to a federal housing voucher. Since it takes time to get people connected to something like Section 8, so we put people on TLS because it's the fastest way. It's locally funded. The county also has programs which, I don't know, Kiara, if you want to speak to, it's a public-private partnership we have. It's called the Flexible Housing Subsidy Pool. We call it the Flex Pool because it's locally funded, And we have control over those dollars. So we don't wait on DC to tell us, okay, you have more money for vouchers. Our departments like DMH or probation, they're able to say, hey, we're gonna buy some vouchers so that we can have our clients get connected to permanent subsidies. So those are the kind of innovative programs at the county that we're trying to implement, because the only way to keep people off the street is with permanent housing. So we have to get more of those subsidies. And I will just say to the math, $2,000 a month is $24,000 a year, right? The cost to put someone in California prisons is $111,000 a year, right? So $2,000 a month, giving money directly to people who need it is ultimately the most cost-effective way. And I hear you, sir, we don't have unlimited money. But when you look at the cost of the system on our public safety and our sanitation, that's more expensive. So what we really are trying to do is focus on those permanent subsidies, and the city is funding a lot of these time-limited subsidies too, so that we can just get people housed.
Thank you. All right, Rob Lushon.
Rob Lushon, President of the Encino Property Owners Association. I think all of us appreciate not you just being here tonight, everything that you do. And I think we're smart enough to know that whatever answers there may be out there, it's not going to happen overnight, next month. One thing that we haven't heard, that we're very concerned about, is while we all feel for and we want housing and services for the homeless, most of us feel every day that city officials, other officials up there, are putting the plight of homeless above the rights of public safety. So my question is following, and our board asked me to ask this. Too often we get an explanation on an encampment blocking a sidewalk. Well, we send outreach out, which again we appreciate. And by the way, Council Member Robbins' staff is responsible for being responsive to keeping our underpasses of our freeways and most of Ventura Boulevard cleared from encampments that we and people here report. But all too often we get, well, we had our outreach, they won't move. Their consent is needed to move. So question, who is responsible if an encampment is blocking a sidewalk or other public right-of-way that threatens our public safety and health? Who is responsible for enforcement of the law and the protection of our rights?
I'm going to ask Ellie, can we get Ellie, can we get Ellie speak to that to start with?
I've had 6 commands and 6 sets of rules.
Can't hear you.
I've had 6 commands and 6 sets of rules. I wasn't saying this, which I kind of stole my thunder. When I'm saying that I'm deeply concerned about homeless and their life and their understanding, and I'm there to protect and serve them. Equally, is to protect and serve the person walking down the sidewalk who has to walk around there, walking to child to school, and has to be scared of what's going on. I'm also deeply concerned about public safety perception. I do believe that some numbers lie. I do believe that people are not reporting crime because they're just giving up on the system, and that is not fair to the taxpayer, and quite frankly to the homeless person. So I have the benefit and the simplicity and sometimes the complication of being your police captain, which is my job is to protect your safety primarily, okay? I don't have the burden that these people left and right, and I do believe that their successes are real, but I prefer to talk about our failures. I prefer to talk about how we could do better. I prefer to talk about how we spent 400 hours of police hours guarding people cleaning up, and then when they come out there, I see those same people coming out of the streets because they did not have a home, and they were taking a phone number, and if they don't answer the phone number, they're put it back on the valuable list, and at the end of the day, it feels like Groundhog Day when I'm seeing these same people at the basins. Now, I'm also afraid that these people might start a fire and the spark will cruise over there, and then it's going to take you years to get a permit to rebuild their house. So these are issues that are really concerning to me because ultimately, I'm staring at my bosses, okay? my job be pissing people off to the left and right, but you guys are my bosses, and my job is to protect you and give you the honest truth as I see it. We're spending a lot of hours kind of monitoring these people, cleaning up encampments, and I see them coming back the next day. That's just the reality. That's just the reality. And if we talk about that, then I think we could head over to a bigger, more solid, more realistic solution. And that's how I see it. Now, as far as family, there's different rules. Some people have different standards. I think currently we have to reach out. We have to reach out to the city council, express that we have a problem on the sidewalk. They will, the city council will reach out for services and try to give them services to do that. Now, I also realize that they're breaking the law as they're doing that too. But that is the system that we have been asked to comply with, and that's what we're doing. So ultimately, the rules and guidelines are divided. I have 2 city council districts in my area. I have to abide to their rules, and ultimately, in many ways, along with working for you, we have to abide by their guidelines in this matter.
So the council member is responsible for enforcing the removal of the encampment?
Let me follow up on that. In short, ADA access has to be maintained on any public right-of-way on a sidewalk at all times, and that's enforceable at always. Outreach teams, our office, street outreach teams, our office, I myself will go out when someone flags that this tent's blocking the walkway or there's some concern. I'll ask, and see if we can get voluntary compliance. If not, first calls to senior lead officer to have that enforced. Ultimately, involuntary enforcement only happens with PD. In parks, that may include park rangers in Mexican Park, but it's going to be a law enforcement official enforcing that. And that's true of sidewalks, but ADA access should always be maintained. You should always be able to walk down the block safe. Your kids should feel safe going down the blocks. We know in practice that doesn't always happen. It may get enforced an hour later, somebody's back on the street. That is a challenge that that's a challenge we're dealing with. It's an enforcement issue, but we are, that goes back to the point where I think to backtrack, it has to be noted that, there's 45,000 unhoused folks in Los Angeles City. We only have about 15,000 interim beds. So on any given night, 30,000 people are living unsheltered to some capacity. That might be in a car, maybe on a tent, maybe rough sleeping. We do not have the interim beds available to get folks in. So that does cause challenge. There are going to be people on the streets in the foreseeable future because we have that barrier of getting everyone indoors at once. We've already talked about some of the costs. Even the lowest cost interventions still add up to a lot of money. That's a challenge there. But as far as enforcement, daily we'll get a call. Multiple times a week it'll be flagged to me. We're following up with PD, and that should be enforced. And to Rob's point, many members of the community have my direct cell phone. They'll text me. They'll text our office, and we're out there within, usually within an hour, trying to respond to understand what's going on there. We take pride in getting to know the folks who are unsheltered in our district, so that we are understanding their cases, so they're not just numbers, so that they are, we know their case plans, that we can hold service providers accountable, that we know how to connect the dots and the pieces of their personal individual cases to get around some of the concerns, whether they have mental health concerns, substance use concerns, whether they have an ex who may be a danger to them, and make sure that they don't get placed into a site that would be putting them at risk. But all those challenges and that outreach and the close attention we spend is to also work to alleviate some of the concerns both that you're experiencing, but also take that off PD, so they're not always coming at this from an enforcement issue. And
Lastly, just to
take another second on this, we meet regularly with our law enforcement partners, with all the senior lead officers. have regular connection meetings to talk about specifically homelessness issues, about encampments that are blowing up, about individuals. And in certain divisions across the district, and we'd love to see it expand citywide, we have the LEAD program. It's a law enforcement assisted diversion. And both police officers and elected offices can refer individuals who are continually interacting with law enforcement. And it's, as I describe it, kind of case management on steroids. They have a lot of services. They can bring people in. They can navigate them through the legal issues and make, appropriate housing solutions and avoid, more incarceration or unnecessary penalization, but get people the help they need when they need it and resolve the issue for good.
I just want to clarify what my stance is. Working with your council office is very responsible. I will give you that. I'm talking about like the Basin area, which is another city council person's responsibility. I've blown up, had the bomb squad respond to 2 grenades at the 405 and Ventura Boulevard. That's the state's area. So they're trying to figure out who I can call. Sometimes I do wish it was your council district because I would get an answer. Some other people, I do not. I do not. It's a very complicated thing. And the bottom line is that when I have cops monitoring the cleanups, there's less cops up in the hills.
I can't hear you.
When I have cops monitoring these cleanups, there's less cops up there giving protection to the citizens of our area. I mean, that's just the reality. When we're monitoring cleanups, we're not out on the streets.
Bernard Gans, I'm going to ask you a question.
Good evening. My question is there any department, agency, or person whose work is directed to reducing or preventing people from becoming homeless?
Yes.
Well, so that is part of the work of the Department of Homeless Services and Housing. So in preventing homelessness, right? So the department has a program called the Homeless Prevention Unit, which uses an algorithm to identify people who are at risk based on which county services they're enrolled in. That program actually is reaching out to people proactively to prevent them from becoming homeless with small cash assistance. We also have the joint city-county venture Stay Housed LA, which helps provide tenant assistance to people who are in the process of getting evicted. And so under Measure A, which is the sales tax measure that voters passed, there is also additional revenue dedicated to prevention. So the county and every city in LA County gets money every single year from Measure A specifically for prevention. So for rental subsidies, if it helps with a month or 2 of rent to prevent that person from becoming homeless. And then I know Measure ULA at the city is also funding a lot of those prevention services. To answer your question, I don't think that there is one singular department across the entire county. Like, we're trying to do that at the county, but there isn't really one unified one. We're working together with the city on Stay Housed LA, but I think prevention is the most important thing we can do is to keep people from falling into homelessness before they're on the streets at all.
My question really was more of a societal issue. You talk about drug abuse and mental illness. How do we prevent that?
Legislator.
Community events. Teach people to keep their job and not spend more money than they earn.
Yeah, I mean, that's a macro level issue that we're seeing, nationwide. And I agree.
To that, I'll just answer a little bit more to that because of my experience on public works, and I can talk about Chrysalis, and then probably Chrysalis can answer as well. But there's multi-levels, as Jonah was saying. Like the mayor announced at her State of the City on Monday that there's $14 million for seniors and those with disabilities who are on the cusp of eviction. Mayor's Fund LA, through the mayor, has also done a lot of fundraising on the philanthropic side to identify, to help fund those who have been identified who are facing eviction as well. who are on the lower income spectrum to make sure that they do not get evicted and become homeless. So, like the county, and then there's efforts with the council member Rahman who spearheaded an RSO ordinance and an eviction moratorium and protections for renters, which was historic in the city itself. But also the city has these jobs programs as well that is funded through the state, through economic workforce development. Chrysalis is one example. We have tons of those at Public Works who are contractors for Office of Community Beautification. Some of them have been doing work in the Sepulveda Basin, and part of it is getting folks who need a second chance or folks who come from different backgrounds who want to learn how to get a job, keep a job, get housed, manage their personal finances. So a lot of it is, as you're saying, it is the socioeconomic part of reteaching or teaching someone how to manage their life expectations. But there are programs from the city, the county, the state, and the federal government who do just that.
I can speak specifically to the Department of Mental Health's programs. We have a few. There's Promote Health, Prevent Homelessness. Okay. So that anybody can refer anybody that is at risk of eviction or losing their housing because of a mental illness. We have teams that will go out and attempt to engage somebody in mental health treatment, meet them where they are at in that process, try to get them on medication, and do case management to try to maintain housing or get them into more appropriate housing. We also have prevention and early intervention programs sort of across the spectrum, engaging people from birth through older adults when they are identified as at risk of some greater mental illness or some greater impairment. So some of that is things like first episode psychosis intervention. If you catch some illnesses early on and treat them, they will do better longitudinally. And then a lot of it is our work with children and families and trying to maintain families and help them keep their housing when it's at risk. So there are multiple programs that provide the services.
What about working with people that have companion animals? You don't discuss that.
Yes.
Karen, go ahead. Ooh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I will say from HSH, it is baked into our scope of work in all our programs for our unsheltered individuals. We do take the time out to be able to show them how to budget properly, but also once we put them into housing, if they are at risk of housing eviction, we do work to figure out another way to keep them within the system and not to go to the street, whether it's connecting them to DMH if they have mental health situations, or connecting with Stay Housed LA with the HPU program, or just simple problem solving. And problem solving is something usually that is like, that's a one-time thing. They got behind on rent this one time, they just need a one-time fix. We can help them with problem solving. But also the other piece I want to say is that it's not always just about rental assistance and financial assistance as well. Our HPU programs as well as our prevention programs also offer, if the rent is too high for their income, looking at another opportunity to move them to another unit so they can sustain their housing with the income that they have, or be able to provide them rental assistance long enough so that they can increase their income, whether through job training, applying for Social Security benefits or any other benefits that they're aware of. So it's a well-rounded approach. So it's case management and financial assistance and making sure that we are giving them every opportunity and support to not exit back to the street.
Really quickly, at the front, I heard your question about companion animals. So that is something that LASA takes seriously, because if someone has a dog or a cat that has been with them through this very traumatic event, probably was with them when they were previously housed, we don't want to separate them from the animal, because we were talking earlier about the people who are receptive to services, right, and who aren't. And if you tell someone, well, your dog who you've been with for 3 years on the street, we're going to separate you, they're never going to come in. So what we've prioritized doing, and we have so many great provider partners that actually do allow animals in the shelter so that we don't have to separate the participant with their animal. And then if there is a situation where maybe they can't take care of the animal, we do work with various nonprofits where they will have a foster home for the animal while we help the participant stabilize. But especially in the Sepulveda Basin. I've been there on the ground, and I was shocked how many dogs and cats there were out there. And yeah, so we take it really seriously. Great question.
All right, we have a couple of people that have not had questions yet, so I'm going to ask a question to Bill from Rec and Parks. There's been, to the mayor's credit, a lot of progress has been made in the Sepulveda Basin, which we want to keep. So what needs to be done in order to maintain the progress that's been made and not regress to the way it used to be before the cleanup started?
I think what needs to be done is the enforcement portion of the equation. Sorry, this doesn't work. I think what needs to be done is the enforcement part of the equation, because I often tell, I know there's so much frustration with our operation is we've cleaned and cleared tons and tons of homeless encampments, and repopulation is my biggest challenge. Is after we clear it, the park is beautiful, it's clean, sanitized, everything looks great, but we often come back to the same individuals, the same persons experiencing homelessness, their repeat repopulation. So in all the work that we've been doing in the Sepulveda Basin, teamed up with sanitation, Solace and LAFD, Mayor's Office. I mean, we've done a lot of work in zones 11 and 12 particularly. And we are getting some minor repopulation, but what's working right now is our park rangers are really stepping up their effort in keeping those areas clear of repopulation. And we just had a recent one just this past weekend, and we addressed it on Tuesday. We went back and cleared the repopulation. It was 2 encampments that resurfaced, but it's the enforcement that will keep the progress going. But with that, we have a very small park ranger team for our huge park system. So this is just a Sepulveda Basin. In Council District 6, we have 15 council districts, multiple regional parks. So I know they're tasked with a lot, and I think that's our biggest hurdle is having enough staffing rangers to go out there and keep the reoccurring repopulation. That is our biggest hurdle.
Wait, there's no mic down here. What do we need to keep it going? And I was telling Adam this earlier, is you all. And I think this goes back to Inside Safe and other encampments, and the basin is nothing different, is for us to be effective at what we do, we can't be there, as you heard about the basin, is we can't be everywhere at all times. And so when we do something, whether it is removing an encampment that is blocking a sidewalk, removing an encampment at the basin, or an Inside Safe operation, the feedback loop is important. Like, tell us where you see the encampment, tell us where you see a fire, tell us where you see something that shouldn't be there, because that's how we keep it going and make sure it doesn't come back. I think some of the challenges specifically to the Sepulveda Basin, it went on for so long and it just got out of hand. And now we have to go back to the beginning, and as I mentioned the last time I was here, is we're not going to stop, we're going to keep going, but it's going to take this partnership of you all telling us, hey, you just did this operation, now this person's back. Or you just did this, now somebody planted a tree. It's this, right? And I go back to earlier, why I'm here is because we're trying to re-engage and do our engagement differently when it comes to the unhoused population, and working with community members is it's going to take all of us to work together. And your job, in my opinion, is to tell us when we're doing it wrong, and to tell us when you see something that shouldn't be there. And we'll get to it. You may not like how much it costs, you may not like how long it takes, but we're going to put in the tools and resources to make sure we're effectively getting the job done.
One last thing to add regarding the Inside Safe operations, from the ground zero where my teams are out there actively cleaning and clearing encampments. I work with Patrick in Council District for over a year at a reoccurring, very challenging location that just happens to be a parcel of land that Rec and Parks has jurisdiction over. That's Army Corps property. It's the 405 and Oxnard lot. There was just a huge encampment there with around 40 homeless individuals, a lot of fires out of that encampment, and was trying to get Patrick to work with me to let's clear this out, that it's just out of control. But I would be dispersing, or the department would be dispersing all these individuals out into the streets with no solution. So over a course of, many, many months, we're thankful to have the support of the mayor's office and a large-scale homeless encampment cleanup operation on July 31st, 2025, and all those individuals went indoors. We've only had one repopulation there. It's like one encampment. So the 40-plus individuals that got housed, there's only one or two that we deal with now. So I know it took time, and it took a lot of coordination and a lot of support from sanitation and the council district and the mayor's office, but that was one glowing, case that I see that really helped us. We got all the individuals indoors, and we're only dealing with one or two encampments now at that location.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to kind of echo to what Bill said. That was a perfect example of city, county, coordinating together among multiple departments, buying a little time from the community to ask, buying a little time from the community, because what we didn't want to do was displace, as Bill mentioned, 35 to 40 folks who were relatively well contained within an unused lot into neighboring areas like the basin or residential neighborhoods. And while at the time it was a large encampment, we were able to work with the mayor's office, get an inside safe operation there, work with our service providers, our street medicine teams, to pre-identify folks and where they could go. Some folks needed higher level services. Those folks were triaged and understood and matched with the appropriate settings where they ended up. And to that point, we've only had one or two people, and we've worked also very importantly close with LAPD to develop a security plan post-operation to make sure that the site didn't repopulate. And that private property in that instance was controlled, and just in the instances of one or two people over the last 6 months have gone back, rapidly responded, offered those folks services, cleaned it up, and got them out of there. And one last point on repopulation. Just to be clear, there are instances where it may be the same individual that comes back, but oftentimes, in the majority of cases, there are certain locations that just are kind of either attract or just a safer space for folks to be living unsheltered. And so while it may be like, a layperson is sitting around me say, that encampment's been there for a year, or 2 years, it may be a cycle of many people who have actually gone indoors, and over that year, there's no sitting person there, and it's been recycled by new population coming up. And that just goes to the magnitude of the issue we're talking about, folks unsheltered in LA.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, I don't think we've heard from Cynthia, have we? So I have a question for Cynthia. Cynthia is with Chrysalis. When I was planning this, I tried really hard to get somebody with what they call lived experience. So that's someone that had been homeless, made it through the system and came out of it, and we couldn't find someone that was willing to come and speak to the panel. But Cynthia was recommended to kind of be a proxy for those people because she works so closely with the people who are homeless. And so my question for Cynthia, what are the biggest barriers that currently prevent homeless people from accepting shelter or services? So when they are offered shelter or services, what is the thing that most likely? What is the most likely reason for them to reject it?
Well, coming from the road side of Chrysalis, I do think that mental illness is one of them. Am I missing something? Ask me that question again, because when we get to the Chrysalis side, on this side of the coin, they work with job coaches. They work with.
I'm not necessarily speaking specifically to as it relates to Chrysalis. Okay. Just in general, when homeless people reject shelter or services, because they do sometimes reject that, they often reject it. What is the biggest reason that they reject it?
Perhaps just comfortable being. Perhaps being comfortable being on the streets. I do think that some want to be able to. Unfortunately, they want to be on the drugs. They want to, in my opinion, And I do believe that if you want to get help, some of these shelters you can't be on drugs, you can't bring your animal. So they're okay with, like, you know what, I'm gonna pass up the shelter because I wanna have my animal. I'm gonna pass up the shelter because I wanna be okay with the alcoholism or the drug addiction. Unfortunately, they pass it up with that, in my opinion.
I would like to add to that.
Thanks.
Hello. It's working. I'm not hearing myself, so I thought it was working. But I will say, as a former service provider before joining the county, there's a number of reasons why individuals do not want to enter shelter, and sometimes even housing. I was a cheerleader, so I'm gonna use my big girl voice. But one of the reasons, echoing Chrysalis, is a lot of times clients are asked to give up a lot of their belongings to come into shelter. Sometimes their pets or companion animals. Sometimes the congregate environment just gives them anxiety and things of that nature. But sometimes it's about how long they're gonna have to be there before they can exit to housing. There's a number of things that come with that. And so this is why it's very important, and one of the things that HSH has baked into their services is about using the whatever it takes approach, meeting the client wherever they are and letting them lead their case plan and how they move forward toward their journey of housing placement. I'm a huge fan of football, so I always tell clients when I have to meet with them, you're the quarterback to this game, and we're gonna let you tell us what to do. However, we're here to be able to tell you what resources are available for you to get you there, but you have to make that choice and you have to be ready to do that moving forward.
Okay, we are almost out of time. I have one more question because this has come up on multiple times, and I'll try to paraphrase. People are talking about the money from ULA. Where the heck is it going? Is it being spent appropriately? So much money was spent from Measure H, and it didn't seem to make a dent at all in the homeless problem. And so how is Measure A going to be any different other than that we're taxing people twice as much as we did with Measure H?
Well, like I said, with Measure A, it comes with money that goes directly to cities and then money directly for affordable housing production and prevention. So the amount of money the county has for homeless services is the same that we had with Measure H. The way that we're trying to make it more effective is by contracting it directly through the Department of Homeless Services and Housing so that we can better account for how your dollars are spent, since they're your dollars, right? You're all investing in the solutions. So we have to do a better job of accounting for the money that's going to fund homeless services so that we can get better performance out of it. With the new department, we're trying to leverage Medi-Cal and DMH services. So a lot of what homeless services are is healthcare, right? These are sick people that we need to get better. A lot of the work that homeless service providers do can be billed to healthcare. With the county, we're working so that the new department can bill Medi-Cal for homeless services. So that means that your tax dollars can help more people when we're able to leverage Medi-Cal and also services that are offered by DMH. And then also, again, the Measure A is providing money through the Local Solutions Fund. The City of LA is getting $55 million annually through La Casa, which is again for affordable housing and prevention. It's another $135 million to the city annually to help with creation of affordable housing, since we need more housing stock. The reason that some of the progress hasn't been made is to one of the gentleman's questions around prevention. We're not preventing enough people from falling into homelessness. So every year, while we're housing people and ending people's homelessness, at the same time people are falling back in. So I think we have to start doing more to meet people earlier before they're on the streets, keeping families together so that their kids don't get kicked out of the house and start living on the streets. We have to do everything we can to prevent homelessness. I think that's the issue, you're not seeing the progress. It's true, we're not preventing enough people from falling in. As soon as we house somebody off the street, there's somebody else on there. So I think that's the biggest challenge. And at the county, we need to hold ourselves more accountable so that those dollars are, again, visible. Like you can look at the website, we just approved the spending plan on Tuesday for Measure A, and you can look at every single, like down to the dollar of how the Measure A spending plan is going to be allocated by the county. So that's what I have on that question.
Okay. Hello. All right. Well, I want to be respectful to everybody's time. I told them that this would be over at 8:30, and it is 8:30. So I will. Before we adjourn, I just want to thank our panelists for coming tonight. You guys.